Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
And can you see the
Yeah, look good. Slides are all visible. That's good.
good, great. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Eduardo Acostamadiedo. I'm working for the International Organization for Migration in the Global Migration Data Analysis Center in Berlin. And what I'm going to present today is a project that was born within the context of a Horizon 2020 project called Cross Migration. I'm going to share the link later if you want to see the larger, the rest of the project. And what I'm going to present today is results of an exploratory study combining scenarios and Delphi and migration scenarios and expert opinion on the future immigration to Europe in 2030. Yeah, this is the basically, yeah, this report here to the left, assessing immigration scenarios for the European Union in 2030, and the motivation. And yeah, this worked also with a systematic literature review, but I'm going to focus here on the scenario one. So the motivation is exploring limitations, potentials of the scenario method, and also the experts to provide um, policy guidance and see, yeah, basically because there's this growing demand for this, and see uh, what can be used for policy purposes. So we try to be very applied with this focus, our focus and clarification. We collected the data before COVID, so all the results yeah, by the end of between October and November 2019. And we started with a first literature review of European migration scenario studies. We tried to aggregate migration scenarios for 2030. So like synthesize what are the key variables that they identified and what are the most frequent. And we put together so we didn't create our own scenarios, but we just like look at the literature and synthesized what is there. And after doing this exercise, we conducted the Delphi survey. A Delphi survey typically, yeah, has like several rounds. We did 2 rounds. First, we piloted the approach with a group of experts that we put in a room that helped us to see if the method was more or less coherent. And in the first round, we had 178 respondents in an online survey. We summarized the results and sent them back to the experts a month later or so, and gave them the opportunity to adjust their initial estimate. And yeah, so yeah, let's see the result of the scenario. So typically these natural exercises have four scenarios, and they identify the most impactful and unpredictable um, migration drivers in the future. And for the context of Europe, it was economic equality. So here you see in the vertical axis economic convergence, so like more equality versus economic divergence, more inequality between Europe and the main sending regions of the world. And also on the horizontal axis, the nature of international cooperation. On the left side, more unilateralism versus to the right, more multilateralism. And when you interact these variables, you came up with these four scenarios. So like, for example, scenario one, we have unilateralism and economic convergence. The scenario two is like the best case scenario, multilateralism and economic convergence. Scenario three is like the worst case, I mean, unilateralism and economic divergence, and so on. And a little bit to give you an idea of what the experts were doing in this survey. And these were, yeah, experts on migration, of course. We tried to contact only, yeah, migrations experts. And yeah, you see here on the left side, this total inflows to the EU. then the source is Eurostat, and here, yeah, we have this line with the observed flows, and we ask them what is the approximate number by 2030 according to each of the scenarios. And here to the right, the experts could, yeah, like um, yeah, their elicited number, and yeah, contrasting the scenarios. And we also asked them how confident they were in this scale, very confident, and they could provide yeah, a number from 0 to 100. And let's see the results. So first, yeah, a little bit how does, yeah, what is the result of this? And for we asked for different types of flows. Let's see first total immigration to EU. So first, yes, we saw before, yeah, this black line is the recorded, yeah, the observed immigration flows in millions, and this dotted line, the 10-year average of the observed years. And here on this gray, on gray, yeah, we see the estimation for the four scenarios, and the mean across all the experts. And in general, what we see here on the right, that is the percent change of the estimation of the mean, and the 10-year average is that in general, across all the scenarios, experts expect a little bit of an increase in the total immigration. And yeah, it varies. For example, scenario one is 20%, and scenario four, that is this divergence and multilateralism, yeah, 40%. So, but in general, increases across all the scenarios. And we, yeah, this is the same analysis, the change in the immigration compared to uh, the 10-year average, and for the different types of flow. So, for example, high skill, the first panel, there is an increase for, yeah, across all the scenarios, also for labor, total flows. It varies in the magnitude, but here for irregular flows and asylum applications, it varies, depends on the scenario. So we see here, for example, in both for irregular and asylum, it's economic divergence that drives, yeah, would increase these flows, whereas more economic equality would lead to less of these flows. And we also wanted to see how much experts varied, um, yeah, how much they converge, and convergence understood as how, if they change their estimation between the first and the second round, to see if there is additional information of the summarized data of the mean and some other statistics change their opinion. And here we have, this is for only total immigration to EU, and for, yeah, like each of the four, yeah, here on the first panel we have the scenario one, scenario two, three, and four, and so on. And we see in general, oops, sorry, that that, yeah, like for across all the scenarios, more or less, between the expert expect, yeah, according to this, this is a box plot. So like this is the representing the middle center of the experts. So like half of the experts are represented in this box plot, and in general, half of the experts, regardless of the scenario, about 2 or 3 million people might come, yeah, depending on the scenario. So that's a difference of about 1 million immigrants. And just to put this a little bit into perspective, 1 million is equivalent to half of the total immigration in 2017. So there's like already some disagreement also. And also, if you see the distribution behind the box plot, yeah, the distribution, there is yeah, like large distribution. So like there's, yeah, uncertainty even for experts. And if you see and also these colors, the red and the blue represent the first wave and the second wave. And in general, if you compare the two, there are not great differences. So in general, experts stick to their original elicited values. Um, so yeah, and follow with we wanted also to compare the experts to forecasts. These are very simple forecasts using a relatively very short yeah, very short observations, just like 10 years of immigration reported by Eurostat. And but yeah, just to see how much expert vary. And here, so there are three types of models: an ARIMA 010, a random walk, a linear out of sample extrapolation, and the third one is also a linear, but with a smooth, yeah, with the 2016 and 15 averaged. Yeah, so like assuming that there was no the so-called migration crisis. And yeah, so in general, and here we have in the first on the first vertical panel total immigration, and below it irregular border crossings. And in general, and also yeah, so here yeah we have the on the black the recorded flow again, and the prediction intervals in this gray, and the this blue box plot represents yeah the in the middle the black line is the mean expert estimate and the standard deviation. So in general, we found that there are larger differences between the experts and the forecasts for more volatile flows. If you, yeah, in general, for total flows and labor migration, um, experts and forecasts tend to align a bit more, but for irregular border crossings, the means, at least the mean prediction interval of the forecast and the mean of the experts, yeah, vary a lot more. And also, it seems that experts, and this difference is even smaller for the third model of smoothing the 2015 and 16 years. And what it seems to be happening is that experts are weighting down the migration crisis. Um, and well, let's jump into to the conclusions of this pilot study. So in general, high skill migration is believed to increase the most, whereas asylum applications at regular border crossing, as we saw, the net effect depends on yeah the type of scenarios. Um, Also, that multilateralism seems to drive a lot uh, higher total and labor migration, whereas this economic factor drives a lot more irregular migration and asylum applications. And of course, you know, like something that is not new for any of us, but migration is hard to predict, even for experts. They are in generally uncertain. They don't agree. They don't converge. I can, if there is enough more time later, I can present yeah, that their individual characteristics don't. Yeah, their estimations don't vary according to their individual characteristics and in general, so that they are tend to be rather uncertain or and what I just showed before also with the forecast that experts are broadly aligned for um, the least volatile flows. And well, returning to this question at the beginning, if should policymakers ask the experts? Yes, but with caveats. And so, like we saw that in general, the policy use of scenarios is this strategic, long-term exercise for top the executive decision makers, because yeah, experts can contribute with these numbers that sometimes they are not available um, in the official statistics for different types of flows, for future numbers that of course haven't happened or now not available. But at the same time, experts show high levels of disagreements, uncertainty, and this limits the use of these methods for more short-term and operational level projects or yeah. So and also one limitation of this is that sometimes the interpretation for the experts of each of uh, the migration drivers is yeah, it's not straightforward. For example, multilateralism for some experts can be yeah, like the creation of more that countries cooperate to create more safe migration pathways, but at the same time countries can cooperate to restrict migration. So not straightforward sometimes some of these scenario drivers. Um, and in general, we found that perhaps yeah, scenarios and expertise should not be based on their ability to provide actionable insights, but rather in their what they can provide in terms of input for policy design, understanding the complexity, challenge assumptions of migration, seeing new perspectives, and basically this is it. And happy to hear your questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eduardo. I would again start with questions from the room, if any, and then again I would just need help relaying any questions that there might be in the room, and then if not, we proceed. Speakers.
Yeah, none from the room right now.
Great. So, Andre, I think you have a question, so please go ahead.
Hi, Eduardo. Thanks for this cool project, presenting this cool project. So I was just wondering whether you were thinking about, or you may have actually collected that data about. So as far as I understand, it was always asking the experts for a forecast with the reference year 2030, or was there any shorter term horizon as well? Because I was just wondering whether it would be actually super cool experiment, right? To do something shorter and then actually be able to compare that to realized flows or so. But yeah, just wanted to that question.
Yeah, so no, yeah, we only asked 2030. Yeah, definitely would be super interesting. We also face the challenge that yeah, we were already asking a lot of numbers. You know, like multiply 4 by 5, you know, like 4 scenarios by 5 different types of flows. You have like 20, you know, like lots of numbers to elicit, and we also struggled a lot on the design of the questionnaire, but certainly it's something super interesting, and I'm really looking forward to 2030 to see if these numbers actually to see how well experts were doing. But yes, definitely would be cool for a follow-up exercise.
Related to the long time horizons, right? I mean, naturally, of course, your scenarios were somewhat vague, right? Sort of convergence versus divergence on certain things. So I wonder, do you have any intuition on how much more the expert would agree if you had presented them like a very specific scenario, right? Like if Russia invades Ukraine, you know, sort of. I mean, do you think even then the experts would have agreed more, or even then you would have seen the same sort of percentage-wise spread for like a very specific scenario? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out if it's something, you know, inherent to the kind of ill-formed scenario, or if it's something just inherent that, you know, experts disagree on potential outcomes, or a mixture of both, so to speak.
Yeah, so here I did not show it, but yeah, like the narrative was we provided a little bit of it was like a paragraph for each of the scenarios, but still very general. And that was probably a limitation that yeah, that, you know, like the way in which the narrative goes, and you know, and the potentially that's why we saw like lots of, you know, like such a big variation. And yeah, actually, yeah, I would say probably if you provide more concrete information, probably you will see more convergence, more yeah, like there's definitely that would help too. Yeah, probably you would get more less variation in their estimates. And also one limitation of the exercise is that we, everything was online except for the pilot. So yeah, like the type of input that we were giving the experts between each of the rounds, it was just this summarized data like mean, median, and different other statistics of variation, but there was little interaction between the experts. So that might also explain such a high variation. But yeah.
And did any of the experts come back with like a particular kind of, I don't know, bifurcation or like a waypoint, sort of like, if this happened, then, I would greatly, I don't know, update my, or sort of change my forecast in either way, or sort of, just sort of curious, like, is there sort of, to get feedback on something, well, I'm quite uncertain and it's due to something, right? Like we have to see if the, I don't know, renewable energies really pick up steam. And if that happens, then, my whole forecast will change dramatically or something like this.
Yeah. So there was a lot of at least during the pilot where we put together the experts and to discuss the the net effect of certain drivers. And like there's certainly lots of discussion on, for example, there is there is on, for example, climate change. It's a factor that is very contended. For some experts, it's super uncertain if actually climate would lead necessarily to international migration, because the people that are probably most affected are the ones that have the least possibilities to fund the trip. So definitely there is lots of discussion on each of the factors, and it can go very, very deep. So it's it will be very nice to to do potentially a follow-up with certain types of, I don't know, like key things, maybe COVID now, the issue with energy, Ukraine, definitely to see to have more nuance on these factors.
Sure. Yeah. I wonder if there is some variation in when the experts responded, right? They sort of was like imagine it was stretched out over, like a couple of months, and whether there's some sort of correlation with what's in the news, right? Just like a recency bias, right? Like if you ask me one day after some new major migration related event happens, right? And maybe, just due to recency bias, right, I'll come up with a forecast that's, much higher than, anyways, just curious. Great. So thanks, Eduardo. Once more.